your growth in other people's eyes is only perspective that they get from you. And when you're the one, you're the owner, you're the CEO, you're everything, you're the estimator, and you're out there in the field too, being the on-site PM, the perspective that everybody's looking at is that you're fucking small.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that the growth that you will get out of creating the perspective that you have a team, that you have some common sense decision makers behind the scenes, that perspective of how big you are will counteract the frustrations of not being perfect. Because nobody's perfect, right? But as a company, as a business, you have to weigh out, okay, and in this case that I'm arguing, I'm simply saying that take the sacrifice of everything not being perfect, because that's going to help you grow so much faster and versus everything being perfect and everybody thinking you're small. So many of these GCs don't want to hire these little companies. Now, all GCs now that are anything worth doing a relationship, you have to have financials. You have to go through a vigorous pre-approval. Companies can't do that, I would argue. And I know there are some companies that do it. One of our big competitors, just to go back, this will give it away, but the CEO died a couple of years ago. And the popularity of that company has been going down. And when I started realizing the popularity of this $50+ million framing company going down, I had an aha moment on this subject. That was a company.
That was a company because it needed the person who passed away in order to survive and thrive. Yep. And so that's actually an interesting defining point, because now you're actually defining at scale, like even a very large company could be a company rather than a business.
Absolutely.
But that company almost had a brand. Like to us in the construction world, and especially in the framing world and the multifamily sector, they were kind of a brand to
the brand
a certain
was tied,
sector of people.
The brand was tied to the gentleman that passed away, though.
It had to have been.
Not 100%.
On a personal, well, on a personal level, it takes time to undo a brand once it starts being undone.
But wouldn't you argue that if you lose a key element, it takes time to get back to where you was without them? You know, if you're unexpectedly lose like a key element, doesn't necessarily saying that. Well, they're a company now, and
did Amazon miss a beat when Jeff Bezos stepped down?
He stepped down at the right time. I mean,
I don't think you can compare the two.
Absolutely, companies. You can, because a business will have the systems in place and the next person lined up consciously and verbally and agreed to that they would step in. And like, that's what I'm saying. Like, there are aspects of our business that to your point, that aren't perfected to the point where the second in command, God forbid I weren't here or I all of a sudden quit, there would be a time getting back on our feet. But a short period of time, honestly. But here in a couple months, we're going through the finalizing processes where it's gonna be plain and simple. It's really it won't miss a beat here in a couple months. You'll have to get in the habit of some of the processes, but they'll be all stepped out.
I think it's a huge difference between stepping down, because then you prepare everyone in the company and the business, whatever, to not skip a beat without you, versus somebody unexpectedly die who you you didn't even want to think about them passing away. So of course you're not really going to be prepared.
Well, that's
and
a
I
company.
understand we should be prepared, but
exit plans. You got to have exit plans.
No, I get that, but just because they don't doesn't make them one or the other. Couldn't like you see a little decline and then they pick back up and now they're the same thing.
No, they're consistently declining in the last 2 years.
See, I think that
they're not getting their legs out or back underneath them.
I've seen a continual decline in their family life. So with the business being a lot involved in their community to be where it's at in the marketplace, it is continually declining. And to me, I agree with that, and that's why I kind of wondered if that's the way it was going to go, but I didn't start to realize that is actually the way it's going to go until about a year after he passed away. Then it was apparent to me that they weren't.
Saying from a completely different side or set of eyes on this same company, I would concur with what I had heard from some pretty dang good sources at that point and after the tragedy of the main force behind that company or business, as it were, when he was here. That's true.
And I was driving around with the second in command. This was 8 months after the CEO died. I was driving around with him, hanging out with him, and he made the comment that he wants to sell. He would sell his portion.
And I don't think that was by circumstance he mentioned that.
He's overwhelmed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He's overwhelmed. And yeah, we've considered, but to buy a business in this market right now, especially the framing business, when so many framing businesses were able to seize the opportunity on lumber prices fluctuating, that would be asinine. You don't want to buy a business in such a great market, coming off the last two. That just covers a little bit your insinuation that there was no mistake. He was mentioning that to me. But and another thing is the glue that held that company together was the CEO that passed away, and I'd have a hard time wanting to do a negotiation without him there.
I think that's a perfect. Yeah. If you was going to do one defining explanation of the difference between a business and a company, this is a perfect scenario where none of us know when we're going to die. We don't. Like right now, our only security that we have really is that there's 4 of us, and that perhaps we would hope that one of us could step in to fill the other shoes or replace them. But even now, if we call this a business, it could turn into a company if something like that happened. That's how I kind of see it. But if that can happen, to Nate's point, maybe that's still a company because everything's not. So it just takes time to build a business from a company.
That's a good question. Like, at what point do you go from being a company to a business? I mean, when you started out, by your definition, it's a company.
It's leadership,
but its processes in place.
Yeah,
it's having the
if the wrong leader comes in and just undoes all the processes, and it becomes a company.
So it goes from a company to a business, and a business to a company, depending and it can go back and forth.
If the processes are in place where you don't have to work in your business in order for it to thrive, that would to me be a business.
Let me ask you this. You spend a week at home last week or around your birthday. Was it a company that like, and this is a question for all of us, do you think it was a company that kept him in business, kept him being paid, kept him going while he took that week off physically? Or was it a business that had shit going that allowed him to do what he wanted, have that choice? If it was just a company and he was inside full time and nothing worked without him being present, I would say that's that's proof that you are in a business right now. And as long as that can be done, I believe that it's either on the road to a business or it already is a business.
Yeah, and it's not like I come down here and I don't do the same stuff as I'm doing up there. I just go into the job and making sure nothing's being framed wrong, which it very rarely is in these jobs we got going now. And so, like, it's not just that week. It's every week. And to your point, like I'm grasping it and understanding, but to the other point, like, if once it becomes a business, at what point is it flip-flop? Or can it flip-flop? Or once you create a business, it's always a business, or otherwise it was never a business and it's just a company. That making sense?